Hey, and welcome to Board with Life News for September 10th. Today we're going to talk about Friedman Fries's Fresh Fish. We're going to talk about One Night Ultimate Werewolf Daybreak. We're going to talk about 2 new games from Uwe Rosenberg, as well as a Kickstarter for Girls on Games. Let's get right to it. Hey, I'm Chris. Welcome to Board with Life News. Yesterday we released our bit for Yomi, so go check that out if you haven't seen it yet. We also released our exclusive bit for Kickstarter backers. So if you backed at $25 or more, make sure to check your Kickstarter updates, because we gave you the secret hidden special We Love You link there. So go check that out. Tomorrow we're going to continue with our 7th episode of our Dungeons & Dragons podcast that we've been doing, where the Board with Life crew and group plays through Dungeons & Dragons, 5th edition. It's a lot of fun. I think you'll like it a lot. If you haven't listened already, you can still have plenty of time to catch up. I'm going to link you down below to iTunes, as well as our non-Apple users link down in the description of this video. So definitely go check that out. Subscribe to iTunes and all that good stuff for us, because it really helps us out. All right, on to board game news. Friedman Fries is releasing a game, Fresh Fish. This game actually originally came out in 1997, but it was limited to 300 copies, and apparently, weirdly, Friedman Fries has learned a lot more about board game design in the past almost 20 years. So this is going to be a revamped version with kind of modified rules, and just things have been made clearer. It's an auction tile placement game where you're working to build fish markets that delivery trucks can come to. I like the theme of this game. I think basically anything that isn't totally standard zombies, sci-fi, whatever theme, I'm a fan of, because it's interesting. And I absolutely love that Friedman Fries generally alliterates his game titles. I think that's pretty funny and good. So, Fresh Fish. Bezier Games announced One Night Ultimate Werewolf Daybreak is going to be coming out on Kickstarter later this month. It is a standalone expansion for One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Those of y'all that are unfamiliar with that, basically it took the game Werewolf, took the narrator away from it, and it only lasts like 8 minutes now. Board with Life, we're huge fans of One Night Ultimate Werewolf. It's a lot of fun, very fast-paced and crazy. One Night Ultimate Werewolf Daybreak is for 3 to 7 players if you play it as a standalone, or if you combine it with One Night Ultimate Werewolf, you can play up to 10 players. It has 10 new roles, and there are no villagers in this one, so everybody gets to be a thing, which is pretty cool. So definitely keep your eye out for that one. We get news of not 1, but 2 new games from famed designer Uwe Rosenberg. First up is Patchwork. This is a small 2-player game that has players competing to build the best quilt, I guess. I like the theme of this. It's something new, it's something original, it's something interesting. So this is a different game than he usually does. It's not a worker placement game, something a little bit different from Rosenberg, which is cool. And then his second game that was announced is Fields of Arle. This is for 1 to 2 players. It's a worker placement game, and honestly, the description of it makes it sound like every other Uwe Rosenberg worker placement game, so I can't really tell you what's super different about this one, aside from the fact it's kind of autobiographical. It takes place in the city or the village where his father was born and his parents were married, and there's like a textile house that his mother manages, so I think that's kind of interesting. I never knew that about him, and then it also makes Patchwork seem interesting. If his mother manages a textile house, that also seems maybe a little bit autobiographical. So that's kind of just an interesting little tidbit that now you know about a game designer, and you can tell to exactly 7 people in the whole world that would care. But hey, there you go. On to Kickstarter news. This week's Kickstarter is a book. It's called Girls on Games, A Look at the Fairer Side of the Tabletop Industry. And it's described as a compilation of essays by women in the tabletop games industry about past and current struggles and secret tips for new designers. So it's basically a compilation of a bunch of different essays by female game designers, publishers, people that are in the industry somehow. I think this is really great. I think it's good to support women in our hobby, because there aren't a huge amount of them, and they certainly don't have nearly as big a voice as the men in our hobby. Most designers that people know are male, most publishers are male, things like that. So I think it's important to keep it inclusive. I think it's important to listen to other voices, especially with everything that's going on in the video game communities these days with all the misogyny and all the hate and all that stuff. It's just awful. If you guys aren't familiar with it, you can Google any article on Gamergate or whatever, but honestly don't. It'll just make you really mad and feel awful about the whole world. But I think it's really cool that our hobby is inclusive, and I think we need to work our best to keep it that way. And I think this book is going to be really cool and really interesting. I backed it, and I think you should too. It's $20 for the physical book, so definitely go check that out. And then you get to read about board games, and what's better than that, aside from maybe playing playing board games. But they're both good, so go do it. All right, that's the news for this week. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to our iTunes now, because we do podcasts now, and that's cool, and we really like doing those. This week's question comes from @MichaelDHM, whatever, and he asks, real-time elements seem to be getting a lot of love from designers lately. Any thoughts or predictions for this trend? I think it's going to keep going. I think that there's more to come out of the trend. I am a fan of the games, but I can't play a lot of the games. Like, I really like Space Cadets Dice Duel, but like the direct head-to-head of it gives me so much anxiety that it's not often that I really can play that. I like games like Escape Curse of the Temple a lot, I think because that's entirely cooperative and you're also kind of like in your own little headspace. I can play that one without getting too freaked out, but I know people who can't get freaked out or can't play it because they get so freaked out by it. I do think it is a trend. I do think it's a thing that there will always be some real-time games, and I do agree that there has been kind of a little bit of an influx in them recently, and I bet we keep seeing that for the next year or two. But yeah, I like them. It's something different. It's something that gets a different kind of gamer into the hobby, and I think that's pretty cool. So those are my thoughts on real-time games. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.